Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Marr. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. Welcome, everybody, to The Longer Game. We are in season 2, and we are talking about the future of retail. I mean, that hasn't really changed, but we're trying to get a really wide array of guests on the show to talk about different perspectives in retail so that brands have an understanding of what they should expect and where things are going. We aren't necessarily soothsayers or people that can see into the future, but we're trying to make accurate predictions and talk about where things are now and where they're currently headed. So today, with me on the show, I have Kristina Mertens, and she is head of business development at Packshack, and they are finding global fulfillment solutions for e-commerce brands. Now that I've given the small snippet that you gave me, welcome, Kristina. Say hi and tell us a little bit more about what you do in your own words.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me and the brief introduction. As you said, I'm head of business development at Packshack, which is a company that was actually a client of mine from my former company. I've been in e-commerce for 7 years now, and maybe someone in your audience recognizes me because I used to do a podcast for my old company, which is Sermondo, where we matched e-commerce sellers with e-commerce service providers, as you are. So
and that's where we originally met too.
Yeah, exactly. So we've really gone full circle here. Now you're the host and I'm the guest. So I met one of the founders from Packshack. He was a Sermondo client. When I left Sermondo around a year ago, he approached me and offered me this job at Packshack. And because I had so many insights and what can go wrong in fulfillment during my time at Sermondo, I decided to give it a shot. And now I work in logistics. This is not something I had planned for my career, but I really, really like it. It's super interesting. And if I learned one thing is that there's no such thing as standard in logistics.
I've got so many questions, but you just said, so many things can go wrong in fulfillment. And I'd love to know, what are some of those things? And I'll just preface it with, everything seems, can seem kind of simple, like getting on Amazon. Just get a product detail page up and advertise and you'll get sales. And that is kind of the strategy, but it's so much more complex in execution. So, exactly. Shipping out a package, put it in a box, put a label together, you're done, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people think that, and they're the main or the key solution is that you really find a fulfillment center that has a proven track record of having like really little error margin when it comes to like picking mistakes. Because when you move to a 3PL, and this is already like a huge operation when you started out with like doing in-house fulfillment, which most e-commerce sellers do, especially when they're small, they just fulfill from their garage, do everything themselves. As long as you have, up to 50 parcels a week, I think that's doable. But at one point, if you really want to scale, you will work with a 3PL. So if you just basically choose a random one, get through the whole process of onboarding, getting your master data there, shipping your products there, and then they don't provide the services that you need and that would satisfy your customers, then it's not only that you have customers who won't buy from you again, you will also get bad reviews, and go through all the hassle again to find a new 3PL, going through all that onboarding. And I think people underestimate how much time it takes to actually get up and running at another 3PL and also do it in a cost efficient manner. So I think picking the wrong 3PL in the first place is one of the biggest mistakes you can do, or moving too late from your in-house fulfillment to an external fulfillment provider.
If you move too late to an external provider, what are some of the problems that you see happen versus, fulfilling yourself?
I think a lot of people underestimate the timeline it takes. So even when you can onboard pretty fast, so for example, at Packshack, I don't want to sound too advertising, it's just from my experience.
Hey, you can advertise as much as you want. I don't care. That's why you're here, to talk about what you do.
So we usually have an onboarding time between 2 to 4 weeks, which is the part where we can, so the time from you sign the contract until we can inbound your goods at our warehouse. But depending on where you are, if you already have a freight forwarder or not, how much stock you have, how accurate your data is, which is something
that's probably a huge issue.
Exactly. Most beginner sellers, smaller sellers, they don't really have their master data in place. All of their EN numbers, SKU numbers, ASINs, like in a really nice Excel sheet the way we need it. So if you have all of this ready and you can cooperate with us every single step of the way, and you communicate quite fast, and we can start quite fast. But usually it's like a seller gets super overwhelmed, gets too many orders, you already start screwing up. And while you're basically trying to fix that bad fulfillment experience that your customers currently have, you also have to take care of finding that new 3PL, finding that new freight forwarder, preparing all of the master data. So you basically have double the work, and you will for sure for a time lack the quality that you want to provide your customers with.
I've heard a lot of brands or just people in general say that there's a lot of problems with 3PLs. Definitely not editing that out. There's a lot of problems with 3PLs, but why do you think that is? Like, I mean, I've heard a ton of prospects every week, I would say maybe almost every week. So if not every other week for sure, tell me had a bad experience with an agency. And the reason I think that happens is because there's specifically with Amazon, there's such a big opportunity there. And so people take advantage of that. Now, I'm taking advantage of that, but with my skill set, taking advantage of it in a good way, because I have the skill set to help people. But there's so many people who either just want to make money from it or want to get in on it. And so I think because the opportunity is so big, people get taken advantage of in a bad way, and they don't get helped. So I'm curious, why do you think that people have so many problems with 3PLs, or if there's a lack of accuracy on the 3PL side, where do you see that coming from?
I think mainly it's a lack of due diligence. So what I heard a lot is that people get recommendations and like random Facebook groups. What most people don't know, it's actually the service provider themselves promoting their services. And then when they're in touch with them, they just believe everything they get told. One thing I always like to stress, like when I have a sales call, is there will be am I allowed to swear?
Sure.
You swear words? Okay.
Yeah. Shit.
So in logistics, there will be fuck ups. It's the nature of it. And
you were so polite. You were so polite when you said that. Am I allowed to swear? Is that okay?
And a lot of the 3PLs just sit there and say like, okay, yeah, we will provide the perfect service. We will have the perfect software. You can basically manage everything yourself, when in reality, there will be mess ups, and there will be wrong orders, and there will be something going wrong with returns. And then what you really want to have is people actually giving a fuck about your business, your orders, that your customer.
That's really dangerous. to say
Yeah.
it's going to be great, everything's going to be fine, there's going to be no problems. You are setting yourself up and that person to fail.
Exactly. But as you said, like there's this huge opportunity. People think, okay, I will just buy this product from Alibaba, get this sketchy Amazon agency, they will get my product listing up. I will just go with the 3PL that offers me the lowest rates,
Mm-hmm.
which I think like most clients that come to us that have been burnt before, it was because of the rates they were given. So a lot of the times when it's like really, really competitive pricing, and I mean, it's way lower than everything else, you should ask yourself why. So either it's because they don't pay their workers enough, meaning the workers in the warehouse, because in the end, it's a person standing there picking your products, will be someone who's not really motivated to work there. And also, a lot of times they have a lot of hidden fees. So then it's like, oh, well, you pay half of what everyone else is paying, but only for the first 6 months, because there's like a little extra tax at the end of your contract. And after 6 months, you actually pay triple, or it's
Triple?
really bound. We had that cases in the past,
Oh my
yes.
gosh, and
Or there
so
are a lot of surcharges in the shipping rates, so they only disclose the shipping rates without informing the client, like, hey, DPD is charging a 30% surcharge ever since COVID started. So you may want to have that in mind when you choose to work with us and use our courier contract. So I think the main problem is that a lot of 3PLs are so desperate to get clients that they basically just tell them whatever they want to hear. But I'm not a fan of doing business like this, because in the end, they are disappointed. We will have a bad experience with the client. We'll eventually get a bad review. It's not a long-term partnership. And this is, for me, something that logistics should be. It should be a long-term partnership, long-term commitment, and scale with the client. And if you don't promise anything wrong in the beginning, then you can talk about everything down the line. But if you sell bullshit and then you tell the truth after 6 months, then no one's going to be happy.
I like saying snake oil salesman. That's a maybe I
Oh,
should say salesperson. But
yeah.
you're selling snake oil. You're saying,
Yeah.
I got it. It's great. And it's like, oh wait, I don't have it. I mean, that's a little bit different because people do need help with Amazon. Snake oil is, I don't think it's a
Yeah.
real thing, which is where the term comes from. But I could be totally wrong on that. But there is help that people need on the fulfillment side. They're just lying upfront about
Yeah.
that. Before this call, before this podcast, we were talking about the traditional American bachelor party or bachelorette parties, and how I said that mine was very tame. I played miniature golf, did some go-karts, went out to eat, went drinking with some friends. My dad was at my bachelor party. It was very, very tame. But I said, go and have that, stereotypical male, U.S. bachelor party if you don't want to get married or you don't want to be married long term because, you do something stupid that night. And it's almost like
Yeah.
people rush in to this honeymoon phase, or they're covering up some of the things that they are doing or have done in order to get someone through the door. And you just end up in a relationship, and I mean, in a real life relationship, or with another vendor, you end up getting a divorce. And I don't think that's something anybody wants to have to go through. So you're better off telling people the truth. And I've had prospects that I think I know we've talked out of working with us because I gave them a realistic perspective of what it would look like.
Yeah. And I think that's the way you should do it. So first of all, great analogy. And second of all, I'm maybe not often, but sometimes I have sales calls and it's like a really, really fruity client where I know, okay, this would get me a lot of revenue for Packshack. And then they say, hey, can you handle this and this and this product? Or can you promise that you can do X, Y, Z? And then I can say that we don't have experience with that kind of product, or this is not a service that we offer. And then they walk away because we're not a good fit. But then that's fine for me. Then I invested half an hour instead of investing hours convincing them. Then they sign. And then poor customer support has to deal with them every day because stuff can't get handled. But I promised them in the initial sales stage. So we're super transparent with pricing. That's another thing. Like, we don't try to duck away or hide it. Someone sends an inquiry, it's like, can you send me a price list? I'm like, here, you have a 6-page document, every single service that we offer, like down to the last thing you could ask for, basically. And when they say you're too expensive, then I say, well, we provide an exceptional service, and like our software is really great. We have so many ready to go integrations that you can basically use for free in your monthly subscription, where you also have your account manager. So I try to argue why we are worth it. But if someone says like, this eats up my margin because I'm too small, or this is just not something I want to spend money on, I'd rather go with someone cheaper, then I say, okay, that's fine. Then you got to expect a cheaper service too. But if that's how you want to build your business, and if that's your strategy, like, who am I to hold you back? So it's always like, I want this, I say we can do this, and either we shake hands and there's going to be a contract and a really nice long-term relationship, or I rather break it off right away.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people appreciate that, and I know I would appreciate that if I'm signing or working with someone. And the expectation setting is so crucial when you're in the the midst of, if you're a service provider and you're working with someone, what are the expectations, and how are we going to, what is the goal, and how are we going to get to that goal? Most people that get started on Amazon and really want to scale, they're not profitable. And a lot of people think, some people are, but it's rare that happens. And some people think it's just going to be exponential growth, and that's going to be great. And one of the problems that people don't really think about is, as soon as you sell more, you have to spend money on advertising, but as soon as you sell more, you've got to buy more product. There's a big demand that's coming if you increase, there's a big need for product if you increase demand, and that causes you to need capital. And that's why, if you get into a situation where you actually have, I'm trying to think of the term, but if you have hyper growth, it could actually kill your business, because you get so much demand and you're just dead in the water because you don't have cash. So being upfront with people and saying, I don't expect you to be profitable the first couple months, but if we can align on what that looks like and see how we're measuring up to that, it gives people a pathway, and that gives them a vision towards, where they could actually go.
Exactly. And I think the problem is, or a problem I've seen over the past years, which is also one of the reasons why we decided to found and grow Sermondo, is because there are just so many like gurus out there, or people selling courses where they're basically like, yo, get this garlic press on Alibaba and then you can drive a Lamborghini in 6 months. I think...
Wait, is that true? I can drive a Lamborghini in 6 months?
I think most people listening already have, I don't want to say the names, but most people have the names on top of their head. So it's basically setting those unrealistic expectations. So even the people who have success with a product in the, I also call it honeymoon phase, like in the beginning phase of launching it on Amazon and or the e-commerce store, then you're like, oh, nice, I really make money with that. And then they just go buy fancy stuff or move into a bigger apartment instead of exactly what you just described, thinking about how do I grow and how much do I need to save to actually reinvest. I think most successful online sellers lived quite poorly the first, not only year or 2 years, but like 3 or 4 years, because every penny they got out of their business, their retail business, they just poured it right back into it. And this is how you grow. And then when you reach like this platform where you're not in the stage of like hyper growth, then you can say, all right, I will increase the income that I pay myself out of that revenue. And then you can move a little slower because you have secured this recurring revenue that you always worked for. But yeah, I think that's quite sad, because I've seen a lot of great sellers start out well and then basically got their financial neck broken.
Ouch, that's a great way of putting it. There was a series called, I think it was called How I Blew a Bag. And for all you older people out there, a bag is like, the bag of money. So getting to the bag, getting the money. And there are these hip hop stars that were talking about how they blew a bag. So how they, maybe made their first million or two and how they just threw it all away. And some of them have been able to come back. But I've heard that with not necessarily celebrities, but like basketball or football stars. They make a couple million and they just blow it and they don't invest in anything. They don't have, they're buying expensive cars that are depreciating in value. They're buying jewelry, things that don't necessarily increase in value. They're not saving money. And so they've had this, lucrative career from maybe a visibility standpoint, and they've had some money, but, in a couple of years, let's say you break your knee or your ankle or something and you can't come back the same way that you were before, now you're screwed. And that's a lesson that entrepreneurship teaches you. Because that's kind of what you're talking about. The first couple of years, you live well within your means, if not under. But as you've established a little bit more security, you're like, okay, I can continue to grow the business and invest in it, but I can actually make more. And that's part of the benefit of owning and running your own businesses. As you're able to secure more revenue and secure more profitability, you can reap the benefits of that. Whereas in the beginning, you were dealing with the consequences up front, and not a lot of people are willing to do that. They just want to get to the bag. They want to get to the goods sooner because I guess they feel like that is what being successful is, which I would argue it's not. But
yeah, I think being successful means that you can achieve a certain lifestyle, and sustain it. And by a certain lifestyle, I don't mean that you have to buy a yacht, but I already think it's super nice if you can just afford your apartment, which is maybe 50 square meters every month, and you like it and it has a cute balcony, and you can do it every month without worrying, okay, whether I will have the money or not. It's not about having like this luxurious, super fancy lifestyle, but just picture the lifestyle that you want and ask yourself, do I really want it, or do I want to be perceived as something? Because I also think a lot of people just buy fancy stuff because they think other people expect it from them. Like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I really have to buy like fancy stuff now. And for me, that is successful if you reach certain lifestyle stages, but you're also in a position where you can sustain it over a longer period of time. And I think those quick money grabs never work well, whether you're a seller or a service provider or any kind of entrepreneur, because usually the way it works is that you screw people over, or you say, all right, I want to make big bucks in e-commerce, and then you just buy a shitty product, but it's just not sustainable. So maybe you will make a few sales, but then like your reputation as a brand is ruined, or your reputation as a service provider or as a coach, guru, whatever, that's ruined if you just screw over some people for a quick buck.
So I have a buddy who calls that entrepreneurship porn, where you're putting out what the reality looks like, or this fantasy of, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm just going to have a ton of money and I'm going to have all the cars and the houses that I want. And you don't know what that person's finances look like, if they end up going in bankruptcy several years later, if they're even happy. I mean, I think there's something to be said that money really cannot buy happiness. And why do you think there's celebrities who still deal with depression or suicide or anything like that? Money does not guarantee that. And one of the things that I have to remind myself of, if I'm comparing myself to another agency owner or something, because I'm seeing what they're doing. It's like, oh, they're doing all this great stuff. I'm just seeing the social media aspect of it. And I also have things that I feel really blessed that I don't know that everyone gets. I have a great, super supportive wife who loves me if something goes wrong with my business, or if something goes well. I've got a really great daughter. I've got a loving, supportive family that's around me. I've got a lot of things that I feel like some people are looking for, trying to attain. So I have to remind myself that that's not the end goal, but that entrepreneurship porn is fantasy versus reality.
Yes.
And if anyone, I've been very outspoken about being against pornography. I get it. Like, in junior high, you want to see things, you want to, at least as a young boy. So you're like experimenting, looking at stuff, but the more that you find out about it, There's a lot of trafficking that's associated with it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of coercion, violence, all the stuff that goes with it. And it's just not the reality. It's not, it is performing for entertainment. And so if you're living a life that is trying to entertain other people, I think you're missing out on a lot of stuff, and you're going to end up empty in the end anyway.
Yeah. I think, or I see my ex-business partner, who's still one of my best friends, my co-founder at Zermondo. He's actually a role model of mine because he is super successful. He doesn't only have Zermondo, he also has his content marketing consulting agency. He has one of the biggest Amazon platforms in Germany. But what I always admired is he's not showing off. So he's not driving a fancy car. He's not buying designer. He just lives in a nice flat with his girlfriend and the dog. And even when he like breaks his own revenue record, it's not like he's like, okay, I have to move in the next bigger apartment, or I have to get the next best car. It's all about being happy with what he has, and then also taking care of his parents, and see that also, I mean, we all get older, we all can get injured, also see that he has like a financial cushion for the future. And I think it's quite nice, because if you see him, you would think like, oh, it's just like a normal random dude, I don't know, working a 9 to 5, but he's one of the most driven, successful people I know. He's just not showing it off so much.
That's the biggest flex, I think, is
I was going to say that's the biggest flex. Yeah, for
being
sure.
being able to be successful and not need to show everyone else, look how successful I am, because then it's not about you being fulfilled. It's about what other people think. My daughter had homework last night, and one of the questions was, do you think you can care too much or too little about what people think? I'm like, what do you think? Yeah, you're too concerned about what people think. You just are living in constant worry. And if you care too little, you can be an asshole. Like, I don't care what you think. I'm just going to treat you however I want. But I think when you care about what other people think, I think you also make stuff up. Like, I need to have a nice house. Why do you need a big house? I have a great size house, but I even think it's too big. So my wife and I have like, how do we, when the time's right, how do we downsize a little bit and have something that fits us? Because we moved into a house, didn't know how many kids we were going to have. We only have one. And the basement was left unfinished because that's where my warehouse was when I was selling, which is what you said. You fulfill out of your garage, or I fulfill it out of my basement. Yeah. That's exactly what I did, but now it's empty space. I've got a little music studio down there. That's where my gym is. My daughter will, play down there with friends or whatever, and we've got some storage, but we just don't have a need. So the big flex is being successful and just knowing, hey, I've done great things. I've achieved great things. And I think maybe the benchmark should be more like, how do I treat the people around me, as opposed to what crap have I accumulated?
Exactly. And if you're only surrounded by people who care about what crap you buy, then maybe you're surrounded by the wrong people.
Yeah, you're supposed to be with people that help raise your your capabilities, make you a better person. You have had a long history in e-commerce. How did you originally get into it in general? Was Zermondo the first thing, or was there something that was the impetus to that?
Yeah, it was super random. So Toby, my ex-business partner, I've known him since I was 13. Then we lost touch for a while, and then we reconnected, I think, when I was 18 or something. And we got super close again. And he actually started selling on Amazon or eBay back then, when he was 16. He always had
gosh.
He always had like this super entrepreneurial drive. I think back then he had to get some signatures from his parents in order to be able to trade online and stuff. So I was always super interested as like an outside person. Sometimes I helped him pack those parcels. He had his inventory in his basement. So it was just like packing stuff, labeling it, shipping it out. So I was always interested from the outside, but I never thought that I would move into the space. I was doing my bachelor's degree in a city nearby in global business management. I always thought, okay, it's going to be the classic path. doing business administration, going to, I don't know, McKinsey, Boston Consulting, doing some consulting work, and then move into some bigger company like BMW or Audi. I don't know if you know, but Germany has like one of the biggest car industries in the world. So this is basically where I saw my path. And then shortly before I was finished with my studies, Toby was like, yeah, I have this idea for the service provider platform, because he also got screwed over a few times, also by one fulfillment center, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then he was like, yeah, do you want to help me and just do some business development, basically taking care of the marketing and sales side? And I was like, sure, I have nothing better to do. Like, I don't have any plans, but I didn't think that this was going to be the start of my career in e-commerce. It was more like, okay, this is a fun project because I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so we built this platform. I learned a lot about platform economics. I wrote my thesis about it, also my master thesis that I submitted a few weeks back.
Just recently?
Just recently. Yeah, I did my
Damn,
master's degree for my thanks, for my grandpa actually, and my grandma. They were like a bit scared when I was self-employed, and they were like, "Oh, you should really get a degree in case you want to work a real job." And then I was like,
did they say that?
Yeah,
work a real job.
But
that's funny.
But also, I think it's cute because I think they didn't really understand what Zalando is or was, and that there's a need for it, and what's an e-commerce seller, they were used to
it's just a totally different world,
to the brick and mortar store like next door, and I don't know, get whatever they need. So they never shopped online and stuff like this. So they were really worried, and I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I'll do it part-time, like work full-time and do part-time my studies. And I learned so much about platform economics in general. I think it's super interesting. Most of our successful companies worldwide are platform businesses, including Amazon, for example. And learned so much about content marketing. So I actually have more of an SEO background. Toby basically taught me all of the fundamentals, and then it was just like YouTube. This is also what I try to tell all of my friends. Like, if you want to be irreplaceable in your company, or if you want to grow your skill set, you don't have to get any fancy certificates and do 2K courses. Just find a topic that you're interested in and then just read and watch YouTube tutorials about it. And then at one point, it feels weird because I would never say I'm an expert, but at some point you just have so much knowledge without going to college or having a fancy degree or having a fancy certificate. It's just like, you invest in yourself, and if you have the right resources, then you can come a long way. And this is also how I landed at Packshack. So I just learned a lot about logistics and fulfillment and sales and marketing, and then the role was just right. I like the stage where Packshack is in right now, because we've only been around for, I think, 1.5 years now. Two of the founders actually do have a freight forwarding company that also used to offer fulfillment services, but like 2 years ago they decided to build an own entity for that. So it's like a startup vibe, but we already have 50 employees, so we're already a bit bigger, and there's so much potential behind it. And I don't know, I just like to, it sounds so cheesy, but I just like to grow things, because you can really be the decision maker, how processes should look like, how should the sales process look like, marketing process, how should the website look like. Don't look at the website, it's far from done. It's an ongoing project.
I'm definitely working on updating my agency's website as well. So you'll never really know, but I gotta say, I feel like that path of non-traditional is a lot more fun. I really didn't know what I wanted to do and got into e-commerce because I just hated my job, and started my own e-commerce business with the help of a friend, and now on the service side, and I just love it so much more. But I hated school. I wasn't bad at it by any means. Actually, I did really well when I applied myself, but I just hated it. And so when I could accumulate knowledge of my own and go after things that I wanted, learn, grow, discover, experiment, I'm very risk tolerant. So I could get out, make decisions that maybe other people would not want to do because it could cause something bad to happen. I would be okay with that and say, okay, I'm willing to test and learn and then grow. But it feels right for me, compared to the traditional thing, feeling like if I go into a situation where it's like, hey, you're going to have to kind of figure this out as you go. I'm like, great. That's exactly where I want to be. If someone says you need to do these exact things and stay in this line, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. I'm feeling too contained. Exactly. I might need to break out.
Exactly. And I also feel, you have a lot of LinkedIn connections, same as I do, just grew the network over the years. And I feel like the people who are, at least in my opinion, most successful, not necessarily financially, but in terms of the they live the lifestyle they want to have, which is like traveling a lot or sleeping until, I don't know, noon and then working late, just basically making your own rules, are all people that had a really unusual path. So the most common pattern that I see is not that you do like your bachelor's, master's, PhD, then you are at a consultancy or a big company like Amazon, Google, and then you think you want to found a company. But I think the most common story is I hated my job, or I hated my studies, or I didn't know what to do, so I was just like, fuck it, let's see where this is going. And I also see that change, at least here in Europe, in our society, that also it's not that bad anymore if you don't have a degree. It's more about what skill set do you have. And I also try to tell my grandparents, it's not like, it won't matter if I have a master's degree or not. Like, I don't care about it really. The 100% reason I did it was for my grandfather, who then passed away, so I also had to finish it.
Well, you're a good granddaughter for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mostly did it for my grandparents, but it won't matter because I met so many people along the way. Lots of entrepreneurs or people in C-level positions and this, I think it sounds a bit cocky, but I don't think I will ever have to do a normal job interview where I have to sit there, do my CV, write a letter, get a letter of recommendation from my previous employer, because on top of my head, I have like 20 companies. I'm like, oh, I would really like to work for them if there's an opportunity and my job at Packshack would be done, for example. I plan to stay here for a few years, but you never know. And I think if I reached out and was like, hey, could I come work for you? And they've known me for a few years and have seen what I've been doing, they will not demand a CV, or they're like, oh, you had a little time off between your bachelor's and when you started your job. Why was that? Oh my God, you took some time off to travel for 3 months. You have to be the most unreliable employee ever. No, that's not going to happen. They will just see if you're a good fit culture-wise and then what you know. And if you don't have a degree at all, no bachelor, no master, but you're like a crack in SEO, for example, or performance marketing, paid ads, and you can sell yourself in a job interview, I think that's way more worth than having some fancy degree, because most of the people that I know who had like the normal academic career don't know how to even get to Facebook Business Manager, create an ad, how to open a Seller Central account,
Yeah. Those are all very valuable skills. And I'd say it's not cocky if it's true, if it's the reality, and that kind of experience can definitely go a long way. But just kudos for going and getting your master's. That I know
Thanks.
cannot have been
a pain.
have been easy. Yeah, that's where I was going with that. So quickly, what is a trend that you've seen in retail?
A trend that I see in retail, especially e-commerce, is that most sellers who also start maybe on Amazon only because they think it's easier. I don't have to maintain my own online shop, build it, take care of SEO, all that stuff. the people who think, okay, I'll just choose a marketplace like Amazon because I can outsource all of my logistics and basically the interface and my appearance. Almost all mid-sized to bigger brands moved into D2C as well. And the ones who are marketplace only still at least are now hybrid of FBA and FBM. Also, I think COVID was a big factor because of all the stock restrictions from Amazon.
Having a good FBM strategy is a necessity now.
Exactly. And I mean, everyone knows FBA is pretty much eating up your margin. So you have to be really, really careful whether you use it or not, or if it's the only way, the only channel that you're going to use. So I think that's the biggest trend. People or brands getting more and more independent from bigger marketplaces who basically make the rules.
Yeah, I would agree with that and would say that just omni-channel is really the way to go, whether you make it into retail, physical retail or not. Maybe a longer term question that you answer, but being omni-channel is definitely the right path, and really what we at the Longer Game believe is the future of retail. Is being omni-channel. So I think it's a great way to bring this to a close. Kristina, if people want to get in touch with you or want to find you and find out more about what you're doing, should they look at the closest Lamborghini shop, or is there somewhere else that they could find you? Where do people need to go if they want to find out more about Kristina Mertens and what she's doing?
Yeah, usually I'm in front of the Louis Vuitton store, like carrying my big bags of dollars.
Yeah, just cash.
So the best way to reach me is either on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. It's Kristina Mertens with a K. Or just my email address at Packshack, which is kristina.mertens@packshack.com. That's the fastest way to reach me directly. I mean, you can also use our contact form, but not sure if that actually lands in my inbox eventually. And I mean, if some of your listeners are ever in Germany, especially Munich, just give me a shout. I met lots of people in the past that I actually only knew from LinkedIn when they were here, and then we just went out for dinner, some nice Bavarian beers, and had a blast. So if anyone wants to come visit me, feel free.
That sounds awesome. And I definitely have good friends now, people that I work with, et cetera, that I originally met on LinkedIn. So it's been a huge connector
like you
for me. Exactly. And we'll have all of Kristina's links and stuff below in the show description if you're watching this on YouTube. So thanks for coming on. To everybody out there, don't try and live a lifestyle where you're living beyond your means and you're just buying a big home because you think that everyone cares about that, because it's not the most important. I will say, though, if you have a goal of like, I want to buy this car or this thing because that means I've made it or I'm successful and that's something that you get to, I'm not, shitting on that or poo-pooing on it. Go for it. But just as long as you know it's not the ultimate thing that's going to satisfy you, but it could be a marker of, hey, like I've made it or I've been successful. I heard a guy who was on a podcast. The pastor of my church has a podcast called The Aggressive Life. He had this guy in who was in prison. I think he took classes in school while he was in prison, but then when he got out, started his own company, started hiring people that were ex-felons, because it's very difficult to get a job, especially if it sucks, because you serve your time, you want an opportunity to get a job. And one of his things was like a black Ferrari or something like that. And after 10, 20 years of working, he was finally able to buy that car. But that was one of his things. I always wanted one as a kid, but he knows that that's not, the end all be all. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us here in the Longer Game. If you're listening, you can listen on iTunes, Spotify. You can check it out on YouTube. We would love to get feedback from you, or if you want to be on the show, you feel like you have a great story to talk about retail, and you feel like you would be a fun guest. We don't have any bad guests on here, but if you feel like you'd be a good guest and you want to come on, reach out, go to thelongergame.com and let us know. Yeah, that's it. We're out. All right, that was the show. What did you think? That was the Longer Game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, even go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it and you're in the retail industry? Then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon Marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given of your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.